Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Independent Film Festival of Osnabrück. I'm here today with Estephan and Marianne from the film Songs of Repression. Hello, everybody.
Hi there.
Hello, hi there.
Hey. So one of the first things that I noticed when I watched Songs of Repression was that the Colonia Dignidad and now Via Baviera, they're a very isolated sort of community. They keep to themselves mostly. At least that was my impression. How do you approach someone or a community that is so isolated to make a movie about them?
Yeah, so I think that's a very good question. And to answer that question, we should actually start with our backgrounds because they were very important for us in order to get close to the people and in order to research on the whole subject of Colonia Dignidad. So, well, I come from a very left-wing background in Chile. My mother, she was a Chilean refugee. She fled Chile in 1973 when the military took over power in Chile, and she came to Denmark, and I grew up here in Denmark. And here I sometimes, when she was speaking with other activist groups or other Chileans, I would hear them mention Colonia Dignidad, but the only thing I would get an answer of if I asked was that one should really talk about that place and not get very near that place because political prisoners were disappearing in there.
Mm-hmm. I, on my side, come from almost, you could say, the opposite side of the spectrum. I grew up in a German minority family in Chile. I was born and raised in Chile. Very right-wing family, as most of the Germans living in Chile. And each time we would drive during the summer holidays from Santiago to the south, we would stop at a roadside restaurant that the colony was having and still has. And it was always this very cozy, beautiful place where people would speak German. You could eat delicious German food. And I grew up with this notion that this was the loveliest place on earth. Obviously, later on, when we grew up and made up our own minds, we realized that the world is much more complex than those black and white images that we had grown up with. And we realized that that doesn't only have to do with coloniality, but with the whole world and political conception that we have of it. And we realized that we wanted to make a film about those black and whites and in-betweens.
And then we are getting closer to the concrete answer to your question because we are of the backgrounds that we are, because I am very closely connected to my family in Chile that could give us context to the human rights groups who deal with the subject of Colonia Dignidad of today, and also because Estephan's background of Chilean German and speaking fluent German made us come close to the people in a different way than other people would do. And then, apart from that, very important for us was time. It's not a close community today as it was when Paul Schäfer was leading the colony. It's open now. You can come as a tourist, as you also see in the film, and enjoy your holidays there, eat German food, bath in the pool, and have your wedding there if you want, etc. But we as filmmakers, we came there and we moved to Chile for half a year. So during that time, we came to the colony every day, and we were generally interested in the people who live there and getting to know about their lives and opinions and views. So we tried to understand their logic, and we let them tell what they wanted to tell, and we would let them show us different places that they would like us to film, instead of us coming as journalists with a specific idea on beforehand about what we would talk about and what we would have them to say. We would let them open up to us.
Yeah, I think that shows in the film as well. The way it's filmed, it's not very intrusive. Like you don't, it's not very, you don't challenge the views or anything. You just let the people say what they have to say and sort of let them tell their own story, which I found quite remarkable. So how was your whole relationship while you were shooting? You said you were there for half a year. That's quite a long time. How was your relationship with the people that now live in Via Baviera?
So actually the making of the film took 4 years in all. We moved there for half a year, then we kept going back again and again. The relationship is obviously diverse because not everybody is the same inside the colony. But in general, it was very positive. And that is mainly because of our way of working with them. So instead of coming and pointing the fingers at them and judging them, we allowed them to explain or to tell us how they, or look at how they live with those traumas and that past in the present. So we're not going in there saying this is the bad and this is the good, but we're generally looking at human beings on an eye level. And the relationship was actually really heartfelt. So with some people we've made really true friendships, and we're on a daily basis in contact with them, although the film has been out for half a year now. And that is also a big difference to how journalists normally work, where you just jump in, make 3 questions, go out, make your piece, and that's it. But I mean, we went there with a truly human interest, and that is what they also felt, and that's why they opened up in the way they did. Because obviously, I mean, in Germany, there have been tons of reportages and news pieces, and in Chile, the same thing. But they're always the same old story. It's always the backstory. It's always like trying to explode this juicy past and make a sensational piece out of it. And we were absolutely not interested in that. All the opposite. I mean, the backstory obviously is there. The past, you can't brush it away. But we're interested in the present and how human beings have different strategies to deal with those pasts.
Yeah, I think that also shows in the movie that how the people are very open towards you, and even though they've had this incredibly dark past, if you can say that, they're still quite joyful to talk to you or talk to the camera about what they've experienced. You say that you're still in contact with some of them. Did they watch the film, and how did they react?
Yes, they did watch the film. We, all the way through this process, and actually always when we make films, Estephan and I, we want to be able to look the participants of the film in the eyes after we have made the film. So it was very, very important for us that they would watch the film before it came out in the public. And when the film was going to premiere at CPH Docs in Copenhagen, that was a very late notice that it would premiere there. So right before the festival, when actually Italy was already closing down, because it was right when Corona was growing in Europe, Estephan went to Chile to show the film to the participants, while I would stay here in Copenhagen and also in Amsterdam, finishing the last things that we had to do, color grade, etc. of the film. So he went there and showed it to the colony, and it was a really, really moving experience.
It was truly catharsis. We got so many totally powerful statements from them. We had a long conversation afterwards where people would stand up and speak about their experience, and several people, including Helga, one of the main protagonists, she would, for example, say that how intense it was for her to realize how damaged she is. I mean, although she obviously knows about the damages she carries on her shoulders, she is in psychological and psychiatric treatment. She wasn't really aware of how that looked. Other people, like one man, he is in his 90s and he has been in jail because of participating in torturing political prisoners during the dictatorship. He stood up and held a really long, very moving speech where he said, "It's only now I realize that it's not only people from outside I inflicted pain to, but also to people of our own. And it's only now that I realize why some of you don't want to speak with me. And I wish you would come to me because I'm ready to talk." And when you hear that as a filmmaker, I mean, I still get shivers all over my body of just remembering that, because of course, when you make these kind of films, you wish to change a tiny bit of this world in a way, but also you want to touch the ones you've worked with. And hearing that was really like, okay, we've managed. That was really moving.
Yeah, that sounds like an intense experience also from your part.
Yeah.
So one thing that I think is, or I thought while watching the movie, was that sort of a central wish for many of the people in Via Bavera is to sort of leave behind their past, and to sort of forget and maybe be forgiven for the past of the community. Do you think that is the whole way this is done, with not really opening up about the things that have happened? Do you think that's sort of an adequate way to, to treat this this kind of past that they have?
Well, that's a very, very important and relevant question, because it sort of points to the whole motivation for us to make this film, that I think we are not the ones to judge. We let them all speak from their point of view and from their logic. But we certainly think that it's really, really important to focus on how to loosen up the repetition that happens in post-totalitarian regimes. And what we experienced while being there was that there is a really, really, really big need of help for creating a reconciliation process, both inside Via Bavera, but also with all the victims that have left the colony, who used to live there, and also all the family members to the disappeared political prisoners, to the ones that were tortured in there during the military dictatorship. So we certainly believe that there is a lack of dialogue. There is a huge need to go through a process where you get other professionals to help in there, and that is something that is not happening at the moment. The Chilean government has been postponing a process to do this, and they sort of ignored this. And I mean, the Minister of Justice and Human Rights at the moment was a very, very strong supporter of Colonia Dignidad during Paul Schaefer's time there. So you can clearly imagine that he's not that interested in putting focus on a help for reconciliation process in what is called Via Bavera today. So, and what we experience there is that they have the participants in the film have different strategies to get on in life, and you can discuss whether one is more healthy than another one, but that is not our, as filmmakers, we show what is there, and then we're hoping that experts can talk more about what is actually the most adequate way to get on. But certainly you can see that Horst and Helga are suffering deeply because of the system that is there today, which is a system inherited from the totalitarian system that Paul Schaefer had. So, and you can see it exemplified in the singing, that some of the participants in the film, they keep singing. They also sing songs that they would sing during Paul Schaefer's time, but Horst, he denies to sing because it reminds him of all the pain that he went through during Paul Schaefer's time. But he wants to sing, but not in the way they do it in there, because that way is similar to how they did it before.
And there's a second layer I would want to add. One is obviously the personal choices that each one takes. And there I would partly also put in doubt how much each person as an individual chooses, because there have been this process where this forgive and forget has been imposed upon them from those higher in the hierarchy. But beyond that, there's also a historic and national responsibility that has been totally neglected. And there you can talk about a more objective truth about what history was. But when you just push that under the carpet, it's the ones in power in what today is Via Baviera that have the monopoly about what they tell about what happened and how they tell it. So they rewrite history in that. And that is for many different, because there are so many different groups of victims, it is deeply troubling that their part is totally forgotten.
Yeah, you mentioned the Minister of Justice in Chile now, which sort of goes ahead to my next question. Do you know, or can you tell us a little bit about the way the Chilean state and the Chilean media sort of approached the situation? Because Marianne, you mentioned in the beginning that when you were young and you talked about Colonia Dignidad, that the main response was you weren't supposed to talk about it. Has that changed anyway? Has the media or the state engaged in any sort of dialogue?
It's actually really, really interesting, because just last week, the film had its premiere in Chile, had its Chilean premiere on the most important film festival in Chile. And it won the main prize at the festival. So that was really amazing. And with that, also beforehand, but after this, the press has really been very aware of the film. And there has been a tremendous reaction to the film, very positive, but also very surprising, because the audience and the press has been surprised in the way Villa Baviera, Colonia Dignidad has been portrayed, because that is never seen before. It's always been portrayed in this black and white manner that Estephan mentioned earlier. And that has the fact that we have let the different inhabitants tell their stories from their own points of view has also led the audience and the media to discover that there is more to this subject than only the black and white matter. It's not only left and right, but there are lots of layers, and there are victimizers who are also victims in there, etc. So we cannot say that there has now already been a governmental move towards helping the reconciliation process there, but we have certainly been able to use this moment to make a call for help from the Chilean government to push more on the whole process of creating a memorial site there and creating a reconciliation process and psychological help, etc. Yeah,
I would want to add, especially because this is playing in Osnabrück now. I mean, of course, the Chilean government has a huge responsibility. It allowed a state inside a state for decades. It participated in the crimes committed in there. But one should not forget that obviously the German state has a huge responsibility in this as well, which they have not acknowledged. The now President Steinmeier, he said a few years ago that Germany had not done enough, that they had looked the other way, which is a tiny acknowledgement, but it is far from what they really did. I mean, just to mention one tiny anecdote, and I could give you dozens. People, very few, but some people managed to escape the colony during the time when it was locked, which lasted for 45 years. They didn't speak Spanish. They had no money. They didn't know what money was. They managed to travel to Santiago, more than 400 kilometers north. They managed to find the German embassy to seek refuge in there. What did the German embassy do? They called the colony and said, one of your members is here. Don't you want to come and pick them up? And that was what happened. They were picked up again and taken into slavery again. Now, that is not just something that we are making up. That is something that is written down in the archives of Bundesnachrichtendienst in Germany. So, yes, the Chilean government should definitely make a huge move. But the German government has a responsibility that they should live up to.
And I would say the German government also has a responsibility in pushing the Chilean government to move. There is a responsibility in collaborating on this. And that we find very, very important.
And just as a last brick in this, because you mentioned the state, but also the media. Now, it's not always the same, but in this case, this black and white image, I just want to exemplify what we mean with that. So it's the same what the colony tries to, how they try to paint history, which is Paul Schaefer was this bad, bad man, and everybody else were his victims. Now, if you believe that story, you could say, okay, now this man is dead, so everything's fine again, right? But obviously it's not. I mean, it was a totalitarian system, and as in most totalitarian systems, they're built in a way where everybody is involved in committing crimes against each others. Now, when you pass from a totalitarian system to a post-totalitarian system, either you really clean up or you continue committing or you perpetrate ways of functioning, systems that keep people locked into these systems. And that's what happened here. And if nothing happens from somewhere where there's more power, so from a governmental perspective, nothing will change.